second NEDA press chat, our last for the year. Thank you so much for braving the holiday traffic, especially here in Ortigas, to join us. Despite your busy schedule na po, holiday na. So again, we are introducing this format, something less formal or more casual, so we can be more engaging. So again, feel free to grab your coffee, and then you can still stay here until 3 p.m. to finish your stories. So for today's press chat, our officials from NEDA, led by Secretary Arsenio Balisacan, are here to answer your questions, explain the government's economic policies, and share updates on recent economic developments. S- Um, Joining SecRC, we have Assistant Secretary for Policy and Planning Group, Assistant Secretary Sarah Lynn Daway Docanes. We also have Assistant Secretary for Policy and Planning Group, ASEC Ray Cancho. From the Regional Development Group, we have Assistant Secretary Greg Pineda. And then from Investment Programming Group, Assistant Secretary Roderick Eric Planta. Also joining us is our Undersecretary for Special Concerns and Chief of Staff, Attorney Melbourne Pana. So to kick off our press chat, may we request Secretary RC to give his welcome remarks and year-end press statement.
Friends from the media, fellow NEDA officials, and government colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First, thank you, the members of the media, for being our constant partners in reporting precise and reliable information about the state and progress of our country's economic and social development. Our close collaboration ensures that the Filipino public remains well informed and engaged in the country's economic governance as we collectively pursue our socioeconomic goals. Recall that in December 2022, we completed the Philippine Development Plan or PDP 2023 to 2028. Launched in January 2023, the plan ensures that government resources, programs, projects, and overall strategies are aligned with the President's 8-point socioeconomic agenda. Our constant refrain has been this, that the plan aims to reinvigorate job creation, accelerate poverty reduction, and transform the Philippine economy into a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient society. Or transform the Philippines into a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient society. 1 year after, after implementing the PDP, it remains the country's roadmap for achieving our long-term vision or ambition natin 2040. We also ensured the timely completion and launch of our regional development plans or RDPs, which in turn outline strategies and priorities responsive to the specific and diverse needs of our 16 regions, including the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. I would like to do a quick rundown of updates on our performance during the year concerning the primary macroeconomic targets set under the PDP. Let me start with incomes, prices, and jobs. In the face of many domestic and international challenges, we've effectively implemented the appropriate strategies to sustain the economy's forward momentum. For the first 3 quarters of 2023, the Philippines averaged a GDP growth rate of 5.5%, making it among the best performing economies in Asia. While this falls below our target of 6 to 7% growth for the year, We are confident that we can still reach this or the lower end of the target, or at the very least, hit a figure near the lower end of the range. Again, we need to grow by at least 7.2% in the fourth quarter to achieve the official target. For the first 3 quarters of 2023, we observed that real GDP per capita had already recovered and exceeded its pre-pandemic level. Most sectors have already reached higher levels than their pre-pandemic performance, while some sectors such as mining and quarrying, construction, transportation and storage, accommodation and food service, real estate, and other services have not yet fully recovered as of the end of the third quarter. This also implies that we can still look to these sectors as continued growth drivers of our economy, especially as we continue boosting efforts to promote tourism and ramp up the construction of major projects. When we entered 2023, inflation was among the most significant challenges we needed to address. In January, the inflation rate rose to 8.7%, with food price increases being the main driver. We faced a battery of challenges throughout the year. Mistimed or inadequate importation to cover domestic demand, high prices of farm inputs, the decimation of our crops due to typhoons, the spread of animal diseases, as well as logistical bottlenecks and competition issues along the supply chain for food. The government swiftly implemented strategies to manage food commodity prices and protect Filipino families' purchasing power, particularly those of people experiencing poverty and households from the most vulnerable sectors. We have seen the steady easing of inflation rate throughout the year. It fell to a 20-month low of 4.1% in November, bringing us closer to our desired level of 2 to 4%. However, we cannot and will not be complacent as we continue to have the highest inflation rate among Southeast Asian peers. This is amid our many risks, including the El Niño phenomenon and the simmering geopolitical tensions that may increase uncertainty and disrupt supply chains. In May this year, the President established the Interagency Committee on Inflation and Market Outlook, or IMO, co-chaired by the NEDA and the DOF, to provide appropriate and timely policy advice to manage inflation in a coordinated whole-of-government approach. The IMO monitors food and non-food inflation or inflation drivers closely, keeps track of local and international market developments, and develops and recommends economically sound proposals to the President to keep inflation in check and ensure that Filipinos have access to their basic needs. For our people to cope with rising prices, we must also ensure that the country's labor market remains dynamic and vibrant. The most recent data show that the unemployment and underemployment rates dropped to 4.2% and 11.7% respectively in October 2023. These numbers decreased from 4.5% and 14.2% respectively in the same month last year. While the unemployment rate is already relatively low, even relative to the rates observed in advanced economies, we recognize that we must work even more to improve Filipino workers' employment quality. The Marcos administration remains committed to prioritizing creating high-quality and high-paying jobs to address the rising issue of vulnerable employment. To achieve this, we must focus on enabling job generating investments from the private sector, and dramatically improving human capital, and as well as ramping up social and physical infrastructure to improve our people's employment prospects. These macroeconomic outcomes are in line with the medium-term fiscal framework, which ensures that our fundamentals or economic fundamentals are sound and our house is in order. This ensures that we can sustain our growth in the medium and long term through government efforts to improve the fiscal space, and despite numerous economic headwinds, revenue collections rose 9.4%, while debt to GDP and deficit to GDP ratios decreased relative to their year ago levels. This year, the Marcos administration has exerted significant effort to promote the Philippines as a destination of choice and investment hub in the ASEAN region. This is one of the cornerstone strategies of his economic program. In coordination with the economic team, we have pushed for and facilitated policy initiatives to create an enabling environment for investments, trade, and innovation. This year, the NEDA board approved the list of 197 infrastructure flagship projects amounting to about 8.7 trillion pesos, which aims to address the economy's long-standing infrastructure deficits. Such gaps act as binding constraints to business investment and expansion. Again, the goal is to generate more well-paying and secure jobs for Filipino workers. This is crucial in substantially decreasing our country's poverty rate to single-digit levels by 2028 from 18.1% in 2021. By prioritizing the completion of vital projects like highways, bridges, airports, railways, ports, telecommunications, and other infrastructure, we will be able to significantly reduce the cost of doing business, expand market opportunities, especially for micro, small, and medium enterprises, and promote high-quality job creation and innovation. Given the government's limited fiscal space, we have identified public-private partnerships as essential to its physical and social infrastructure drive. Pursuing PPPs allows us to tap into the private sector's valuable technological and managerial expertise and its financial resources to propel our development efforts forward. The President recently signed the Public-Private Partnership or PPP Code into law. The law harmonizes the regulatory and legal frameworks for PPPs and strengthens the enabling PPP institutions. Through the PPP Code, we aim to reinforce the country's investment ecosystem and ensure private sector investors of a more stable and predictable policy environment to foster collaboration and high-impact infrastructure projects. The amended Public Service Acts implementing rules and regulations or IRR became effective in April 2023. A year's worth of collective effort with 21 implementing agencies. This enables 100% foreign ownership in key infrastructure sectors of the economy such as airports, telecommunications, railways, expressways, tollways, and shipping. We expect to reap the economic dividends from investments in these sectors in the coming years. Furthermore, the Philippines joined the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or ASEP agreement, making a significant step toward strengthening our position as an attractive trade and investment destination in the ASEAN region. This move expands our market access, a boon to our export sector, and streamlines trade regulations in alignment with our economic objectives. We aim to forge similar partnerships with many other countries, either bilateral or multilateral. The creation of the Maharlika Investment Fund provides the government with an additional vehicle for making strategic investment in areas critical to the development of the country. In terms of sustaining long-term economic growth, we recognize innovation's crucial role in boosting productivity. This year, the National Innovation Council, chaired by the President, approved the National Innovation Agenda and Strategy Document, or NEA SD, for 2023 to 2032, which outlines the country's plan to enhance innovation governance and cultivate a dynamic innovation environment. We published the IRR of the Digital Workforce Competitiveness Act, which will ensure the upskilling, retraining, and training of our workforce for for the emerging demands of the labor market. This year, we have moved our country's ranking in the Global Innovation Index from 59th to 56th out of 132 countries. This inspires us as we continue to seek our partnership for collaboration with the private sector as the main engine of innovation, and as we further recalibrate the policy and environment to enable the generation of new ideas to our outlook for 2024. As you know, the multilateral institutions have projected a comparatively strong growth performance for the Philippines in 2024. We aim for a GDP growth rate of 6.5 to 8%. The DBCC will meet on Friday this week to reassess the growth targets, especially for 2024, in light of recent developments, particularly the continuing weakness of the global economy. As we approach the new year in a few weeks, we are keenly aware of the persisting challenges we confront as we aim to hit such a target. Elevated inflation remains a risk because of the onset of El Niño, which is expected to persist until the second quarter of 2024 and may bring drought to as many as 65 provinces and dry spells to 6 other provinces. Meanwhile, external price pressures stemming from geopolitical tensions and the imposition of export bans in other countries remain, which may drive global prices higher and raise uncertainties in the availability of food supplies. Moreover, the limited absorptive capacity of implementing agencies continues to pose challenges, even as we seek to stick to our spending catch-up plans to drive growth. We know that we must intensify implementing our interagency measures to tackle supply side limitations and curb the rise in food prices. We have been mobilizing for the anticipated impacts of the upcoming El Nino through a comprehensive, coordinated, science-based approach involving the national and local governments and the water, agriculture, energy, health, and public safety sectors. Recently, the President created the Task Force El Nino, led by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council under his office, to serve as the coordinating body to consolidate all measures to mitigate the impacts of the El Nino phenomenon. We shall expedite the effective execution of programs to utilize government appropriations for public services and infrastructure programs fully, and by properly implementing reforms and initiatives, intensify efforts to promote investment and trade. Building on the reform momentum, NEDA shall vigorously advocate for the critical pieces of legislation in its policy advisory role and as the Secretariat of the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or LEDAC. These forthcoming reforms are designed to optimize the utilization of limited and valuable resources, such as land, minerals, and public revenues. The legislative measures addressing systematic challenges in particular sectors are intended to facilitate the development of industries and economic drivers that will create a more significant number of high-quality jobs, open up a variety of opportunities for our workers, and lead to sustained reductions in poverty and vulnerability in the future. I'm optimistic that we can continue to drive and maintain our economic progress for the coming year and beyond. With our priorities in check, we remain hopeful that 2024 will bring us closer to achieving our cherished ambition, that of a matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay para sa lahat. Maraming salamat at maligayang Pasko sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Sec RC. Now we are opening the floor for questions or clarifications. So kindly raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. Kindly state your name and media affiliation before asking your question. So by the way, I'm Timmy Cabana from the Development Information Staff, and I'll be your moderator. So we have until 12 o'clock for Q&A. So anyone po? Kai, and then may I see another? Okay, so Kai first.
Hi sir, good morning po. Sir, yung sa El Nino lang because of the announcement ng ni Secretary Solidum, yung sa 65 provinces, ano na po yung po pwedeng gawin ng IAC, IMO at saka po NEDA na rin in terms of policy interventions for those who will be affected, as well as yung possible na tama niya sa ating sa ating agriculture. Thank you.
As reported, the El Nino is expected to persist until the second half of not second half, the second quarter of next year, no? As opposed to our earlier expectation that it would peak and then recede within the first quarter of next year, no? So that is a longer period horizon for us. Now, the IAC IMO has been tasked to monitor the developments in the various markets, particularly those basic commodities, food in particular, to ensure that we are able to fill the gap in any between supply and demand, and to ensure that prices will remain within rates of ordinary people, particularly the poor. In the meantime, we also have our DSWD accelerating its programs. As you know, we are launching, or we have launched the food voucher system, which together with our digitalization will make the delivery of such assistance more efficient and timely. So, and then the various agencies, particularly the Department of Agriculture, Department of Energy, Department of Health, will ensure that the negative effects of the drought, particularly the outbreak of diseases, like dengue, will be controlled, and so the task force that I mentioned earlier, the task force on El Nino, is set up to consolidate all those measures and report directly to the president. And I think with that setup and with periodic coordination, we should be able to minimize the adverse effects of the El Nino. But for us at NEDA, we are watching closely the markets, obviously, because as in the past El Nino episodes, especially if it affects many provinces simultaneously, that could lead to uptick increases in prices, and that's what we want to do, to prevent. And so we'll monitor closely, and we use all other tools of government, like even including our trade policy tools, to ensure that we are able to minimize the negative effects of the El Nino phenomenon.
Sir, follow-up lang po. Regarding the impact on growth naman for next year, what would drive, because the projection was the El Nino will be as severe El Nino, and the last time we had that was 97, 98. So, yung impact lang po sa growth.
You know, the big difference between 1997, 1998, and now is that the relative share of agriculture in the economy is now much smaller. No? Now our agriculture is roughly on that something like 10% of the economy. No? And if we are able to preposition all our services, including the good news is that all our irrigation dams are fully full. So there's enough, and they were assured that there's enough water, uh, at least to cover us during the most of the period. But that doesn't mean that we relax and put our guards conservation. No? We'll need to conserve, to ensure that if the El Nino linger longer than expected, longer than April or May, we have enough good cover. So with respect to growth, to the effect on the economy, I don't think that it will make a big it will impact, and what that channel will probably more on the prices, because if the prices will food prices will pick up, then the gains that we have made in leaking inflation will return, will be reversed, and we don't want that. And we go back again to the old cycle of high inflation, high interest rate, low demand, low growth. We don't want that, and that's why, from the point of view of NEDA, we have to watch closely those prices, to ensure that we are able to intervene and mobilize government tools, policy tools effectively. No?
Thank you, Sec. Thank you, Kai. I see Mika, and then followed by the lady. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, Sec RC, Mika of Reuters. Sir, you mentioned one of the interventions that you're looking at is trade policy tools that are available to government. So, I was wondering if, given the drought expected in several provinces next year because of the El Nino phenomenon, will you urge uh, traders to front load imports for particular key commodities so that prices will remain stable because local supply could be disrupted because of the El Nino?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. That the time to import to store is now. So that will and if such storage happen early, then we can moderate the increases in prices next year. If not, even sustain or um, uh, uh, the aim is to prevent any uptick in prices that will translate into higher inflation.
Sir, related to that, NEDA has made a pronouncement before that it has recommended to extend the effectivity of EO10. I was wondering if there's already a decision on that.
Yes, we are going. The NEDA board will meet on Thursday, tomorrow, no? And that's part of the agenda. The extension of the EO10, and that includes the basic commodity, rice, corn, pork, yeah. So again, it is going to be seen as part of that preparation for the difficult months next year. No?
Sir, lastly, not to preempt what will be decided tomorrow, but I was wondering if the discussion will just be on the extension, or will there be an adjustment also on the tariff rates that are contained in the EO?
That will require a separate process kasi what has been discussed and endorsed by the Committee on Related Matters of the NEDA board is a proposal to extend the currently reduced tariffs for those commodities. No? Uh, another proposal to reduce that level of the tariff further that will need to go through a different another process of consultation as required by our processes.
Thank you, Mika. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, sir. Darlene from NNA. Sir, I understand that inflation is still above target last November at 4.1%. Sir, when do you expect it to reach the 2 to 4% target? Do you see it happening in December, or it might take longer because of El Nino?
We are intent and getting into the 2 to 4% target despite the El Nino. No? That's why for us managing this El Nino is very crucial, and the money needs supply and demand for basic commodities is crucial. Yeah, and I think that for December that the inflation could have moderated further because gasoline prices have declined. Oil prices have declined because of the low demand in many big countries. But and also many of our production areas have recovered from the floods in the past months. No, so the risk lang is next year when for the next planting season, and especially for the summer crops. Kung tuyo yung lupa medyo but again the good thing is unlike in the previous El Nino na dumating ng El Nino wala rin kulang rin yung mga dams natin, but good for us because of the rains in the past months. We have most of our dams are all the dams are reportedly have are in full capacity.
Sir, sorry, ibang topic lang. On the Mindanao Railway project, sir, have we already identified a financing source for that project? Thank you. Mindanao Railway project, sir, financing po.
Not yet, but that again is we have opened that up, and we are entertaining, of course, the possibilities. The main consideration obviously is what is what's best for government, and so we are looking to that along with the other projects. That's the job of the DOF. No?
Thank you. Other questions? Go ahead, Mike, please.
Good morning to our NEDA officials, Secretary Balisacan. Sir, I just have several questions on GDP growth. So from your statement, sir, you kind of tempered the view that we will hit or be near 6% for 2023. So how is the fourth quarter growth shaping up for you to have that assessment so far?
I'm quite positive about the fourth quarter because as you see, the inflation has moderated. That's one. The labor market has been performing. The October data on the labor market is very positive. And then the oil, as you said, commodity prices have been moderating, and I think that we see there are some. I think even the manufacturers index has also been quite positive. So I think the fourth quarter is likely to be good as well. But again, if even we miss the 6%, uh, uh, um, uh, let's say 5.7, 5.8. I mean that's still comparatively at least in the Asian region is going to be a very respectable outcome, no? Because many other countries had poorer prospects as a result of the external headwinds. No?
Sir, and you mentioned that the DBCC will meet on Friday. So, for 2024, sir, given that the 2023 growth is already likely to be hit the lower end or be lower. So, is there a possibility or likelihood that we will also adjust the 2024 figure, our target?
I think that if I would not this early give away uh, this 6.5% as target, no. But the 8 might be already out of out of range. So maybe way out, reducing the range is one proposal. But we'll see once we get all the information.
Thank you, sir. And last from me, sir. Have you seen the effect of the tight monetary policy on the economy, and if so, will we still feel it towards 2024?
I think there are many factors, no, that influence the movement of or the actions of our monetary board. No? One, of course, is the inflation, but they are also concerned about how other economies, other central banks around the world, particularly those that the major ones, are managing their monetary policy. No, if they are tightening, then you cannot be doing the opposite because otherwise you'll encourage a lot of outflow. So pwede rin silang sumunod doon, notwithstanding the inflation trend. So yeah, that kind of balancing act that they do. But as to the effect of the economy, of course, the high interest rates that were imposed since late last year are now being felt today. You can see that in the investment figures, for example. Businesses could have postponed their investment plans while waiting for better signals. Um, and also the borrowing is higher, so households could have also postponed their purchases of durable goods, durable equipments, and so things like that. And you can see that also in the slowdown of the domestic demand in the third quarter. Particularly the consumption, household final consumption expenditure.
Thank you, Dreo. Yes, please.
Hi, Sec. Ted po from GMA News Online. So you mentioned about reducing the target range for GDP growth target range for next year. Was that NEDA's proposal for the DBCC's next meeting?
It's I'm still going to meet my team after this meeting, so I don't. I'm just playing things in my head right now, but I still am going to listen to what they show me and what position we would bring to the DBCC. But I think that my experience is that we do targets and so that you have something to work on very hard. If it turns out that you miss it, your response should not be to reduce your target. It's to work harder to get it back. Yeah. And so that you get in. Otherwise, what's the point of doing targeting if you can change it anyway? So get it at a reasonable. And I do think that 6.5% is a very reasonable. It's not out of the blue. We have managed 6.3% average growth from 2010 to 2019. 6.3% per year. So what is big deal about 6.5? You know?
Sir, you mentioned na 8% is already out of the blue. Out of the line.
No, maybe not out of the blue, but maybe to a bit but as for the for the medium term, I will stick to the 6.5 to 8 for the medium term. But the reality is next year kasi is, of course, all the major multilateral agencies are seeing that the global economy is not as expansive as they initially expected, and for us to also ignore that is not good as well, no? So we can there's no harm reducing that from 8 to something lower, to be realistic, but not to lower the 6.5, because I think that then you're surrendering too early. We have had worse fights before in our life as an economy, no? I remember my time during the Aquino administration. Ganon din palagi. Ire-reduce yung target. Sabi ko, kami sa NEDA noon, pinaglaban yung target. Because even if the World Bank or ADB or many of these other agencies were reducing our targets, their prospects for the economy, we stick to the target. And the history proves us right. I mean, the average growth rate was 6.3%. That was the highest in 40 years during that time. So I think if we need to continue with the growth of 6.5 to 8 for the medium term, so that we ma-achieve natin yung ambition natin 2040. Kasi otherwise, hindi natin ma-achieve yun. Right?
Thank you, Sec. Thank you, Ted. Other questions? Okay, Mika.
Related to that, because the medium term growth target is 6.5 to 8%, but we have, as you mentioned, ambition 2040. So I was wondering, on average, what's the needed growth in order for us to be able to achieve the target that are embodied in the 2040 long-term goal?
When I was working on that in my team, in 2015, precisely it's 6.5 to 8% growth. Actually 6.5 to 7.5%, or roughly about 7% to get there. And so the Marcos administration program is not crafted out of it was well informed by the kind of information, data, and hard work. So it's doable. We need to stick to that growth. And in perspective, historical perspective, if you look at those countries like South Korea, when they experience the so-called East Asian growth miracles, they were growing at faster than 7%. To transform the economy from a poor economy to an advanced economy in one generation. You cannot do that rapid transformation in one generation if you are only growing at 5 to 6%. That's why we need to be more ambitious as people. We cannot afford to be already to be we need to catch up with our neighbors, and we need that growth. But of course, apart from growth, just to be sure that I am not misconstrued, no, uh, we need to make that growth also very inclusive, no, so that it benefits everyone. No? That's because that's also one of our weaknesses, no. Uh, Previous growth episodes in the past, no, in 70s and even 80s, 90s, when there are episodes of growth, um, so concentrated yung benefits of that growth. So that's why poverty reduction was so slow. When I was doing my work as trying to dig deep into the data on poverty and growth, uh, what I found was that many of the countries around us had a very strong or or their poverty is so poverty reduction is so responsive to growth. Um, Meaning whenever their economy picks up, the poor, the number of poor, the proportion of poor people in their society decreases. Ganun naman sa atin, kaya lang at a much lower scale. Hindi masyadong nagre-respond yung poverty sa sa growth. Kaya even Mahar Mangahas dun sa Social Weather Station, monitoring niya ang poverty and GDP, weak yung correlation. That's why we are pitching dito sa economic program ng previous ng itong administration natin ngayon is inclusivity, get the quality of employment improve and make those the human capital of our labor force, particularly the poor, good enough to fit into the evolving labor market conditions, no?
Sir, I think poverty data is due to be released either this month or sometime next month. How optimistic are you that the numbers have improved given also the recovery of the economy?
Okay. When I look at the last 10 years and the connection between poverty and growth, I'm now more bullish about that connection, because if you look at the 2015 and 2018 data, for example, those 2 years na meron tayong household data and poverty, you find the growth was so responsive to the poverty reduction was so responsive to growth during that period. And if I go back, sorry, if you go back, you find that that's starting as even with 2012, 2015, and the 2018. So I think that our labor market is changing a bit, such that when the economy grows, it's creating opportunities for low-income people. Now, if I look at the numbers closely, the quality of the jobs is the one that is really one thing, no? And that's why in this administration we are focusing on the quality of jobs. But as I keep saying, the quality of jobs cannot happen, or and improved quality of jobs cannot happen if kung walang investment. That's why massive yung yung efforts natin to enable an ecosystem conducive for investors, whether these are local investors or foreign investors, so that good quality jobs could be generated.
As okay, Luisa, but as for the poverty stats, we just checked with PSA and they're planning to release it this month, but let's just wait for the official announcement, probably next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Luisa.
Hi, good morning, Sec. Luisa from Business World. Sec, sorry, on your 2024 outlook, what do you think will be crucial to hit the at least 6.5%? Or could you elaborate on what components of the economy will drive this at least 6.5%? Thank you, Sec.
As you know, the economy is very much dependent on or is it growth is dominated by services, no? About more than two-thirds of the economic growth come from the growth of that sector, no? And that um, sector accounts for roughly the same two-thirds of that, or even 70% in some years, no? Of the economy coming from that sector. So I think with the revival of, with the complete opening of the economy, you would expect growth to continue there, to be driven by the services sector, particularly tourism, which has not, as we showed earlier, fully recovered the pre-pandemic level yet. Um, we expect the IT BPM sector to remain strong, but we also would want to see other drivers coming in. I think construction will become a major driver next year. The housing program, the all these major infrastructure projects, the IFPs, will are now beginning to be implemented, no? And many of this will start constructions next year. So I think you'll see other drivers. The agriculture, of course, will be a major challenge because of the El Nino. So you would not expect much growth there. But we hope that we will be able to recover lost production in the first half toward the second half, no? At least for agriculture. Naman sa demand side, of course, it's domestic demand, house, particularly consumption, household final consumption. The good thing about the Philippine economy is that at least in relation uh, to this current weakness of the global economy, is that we are not so dependent on exports as a driver of economic activity, no? Ano yun, it's, as I said earlier, it's largely domestic, and then the consumption side, domestic demand, no? Although, of course, if you get the exports growing faster, then that it helps, but you would expect that domestic demand to be the primary driver next year. Exports that we hope can recover toward the second half of next year, when all these geopolitical tensions, and we hope so I think that's and then of course the low inflation will be a major driver. If you can go back to the 2 to 4% next year, then that will rekindle robust demand, no? Domestic demand, particularly household final consumption expenditure.
Thank you, Luisa. Yes.
Good morning, sir. Ian Sigaral from Philippine Daily Inquirer. Question lang po, because in the previous Duterte administration, its infrastructure program faced labor shortages. And at that time, President Duterte admitted that it was one of the reasons for the delay in the projects. Sir, for right now, sir, are we still seeing the same problem po, labor shortage for infrastructure program? And if yes, gano'n na po niya na-delay yung mga projects? Thank you.
Well, um, it's a question of kwan naman of actually of pay, no? Many of our workers have left and continue to live, no? Uh, for other more lucrative jobs elsewhere. Our hope is that as we revive as we ramp up uh, developments in our country, there will be and our workers can find similarly lucrative jobs here. They will stay here, no? They can opt to stay here. Um, and yes, scarcity, but when jobs are becoming scarce, that's good for labor because their wages rise. Uh, and that's what you would expect in a rapidly growing economy. That when the economy is growing fast and in a sustained way, eventually nade-deplete mo na yung what we call the surplus labor or underemployed labor, no? So and then employers would start, because the labor is now becoming scarce, would have to start paying more, no? So that they can attract those workers. So I would not see the growing scarcity as a problem. Of course, but what if what you are saying is scarcity because of our inability or inadequate production of skills by our institutions like our schools, then tama ka. We understand that our TESDA has instituted several programs to address this upskilling needs, no? And the training of new workers. Kahit nga sa ano na, you may experience this yourselves in your own villages, but kahit sa village namin, ang hirap maghanap ng karpintero. Kung gusto mong karpintero, babayad ka ng mataas. But I find that as a good development, that finally, wages are rising because there is already scarcity of labor. Ganon sana ang gusto nating mangyari kahit sa mga unskilled and semi-skilled. If there is enough job or the creation of job is fast enough, eventually kahit yung semi-skilled labor magiging scarce yan and their wages will rise. That's what development is all about.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, Mika.
Sir, your predecessor, Secretary Carl Chua, was worried about at the height of the pandemic the long-term economic scarring um, because of the coronavirus pandemic. I was wondering if, given the recovery of the economy that we've seen in the past year, um, if that long-term economic scarring has been reversed, or does that remain a problem given that some sectors have not yet fully recovered from pre-pandemic levels?
I think the long-term scarring would likely or has likely affected most the small and medium enterprises, no, especially those who lost their networks, their market networks, their source of financing, and recovering from that is quite difficult. But the other more disturbing source of scarring would be the human capital lost, especially for children. Uh, our that long period na walang pasok meant a lot of learning losses, no? and those losses, if not remedied early enough, could become long-term losses. No? So, and those will not be felt until those kids will join the labor market, and they will not be as productive as we would have expected them. No, in other words, the potential of the economy would be affected by deterioration in the human capital. But as we have said, the DepEd is now introducing programs, no, to recover some of those learning losses. We need to do much more, I think, and it has to be a whole of society approach. The private sector need to come in and to ensure that our workers, future workers, will remain as competitive as as the children of the Indonesian, Thai, the Vietnamese people, no.
No more? Oh, go ahead, please. You have questions on infra,
Sec.
on macro?
You mentioned po na El Nino will have a minimal impact on growth next year, but the challenge will be on the prices. Do you have, sir, an assumption how high inflation can go because of the severe El Nino?
That's what I'm saying earlier, that the interagency committee, IASC, IMO committee na formed to monitor supply and demand situation, particularly market outlooks, no, is able to provide enough guidance to government, to the executive branch, the president, so that we can curtail any potential price spikes that can may be associated with El Nino. No? So, in other words, we are not saying that although potentially the El Nino could cause prices to rise, uh, uh, if we intervene enough, early enough, and fast enough, we may be able to reduce that upward pressure on prices, no. So kaya napaka-importante yung data sa amin, sa NEDA, so that we can provide our policymakers the right information. So dalawa yung sa presyo mismo, we need to ensure that we are deploying all the possible tools that government that it has in its disposal to prevent any sharp increases in prices, while at the same time ensuring that the most vulnerable people, families in our population, are protected from even modest increases in prices, no? So kailangan natin yung mga direct intervention programs like what DSWD is building up, no, for the El Nino and beyond.
Thank you. Other questions? Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, sir. J. Mark Dagala, Radyo Pilipinas. Sir, para lang mabigyan namin sa radio yung ng context yung mga tagapakinig. Ano po yung mga nabanggit nyo kanina, inaasahan pa yung tataas yung trabaho next year. Ano po yung mga industry na ina-expect nyo na magbo-boom, na makalilikha po na mas maraming trabaho?
I think number one is yung, I think sa construction, you would expect a lot of that uh, to happen next year. And again, some of those might uh, uh, workers might be in high demand. Uh, those workers needed in the tourism sector, um, accommodation, restaurants, and so on. Um, I think many of those sectors in the services, but we expect also um, our with the uh, lower inflation and uptick in the domestic demand, we will expect also manufacturing to also pick up a bit, and so that we would expect also employment gains there. Um, um, so it's essentially there. Um, Hopefully, we can also um, so, start the whole process of opening also our responsible mining programs. Kasi sayang yung ano natin mga opportunities natin sa mga minerals natin kung hindi natin taken advantage now, especially in light of the demands by the green technologies, no?
Sir, follow-up ko lang. Nabanggit niyo yung sa mining. Paano nito masesettle yung mga environmental issues na kinaharap naman nito sa mga nakalipas na panahon po?
Kaya nga sinasabi ko responsible mining.
Yun.
Dapat we should not sacrifice the environment, no? And then there are many mining areas around the world where you can see that mining can go hand in hand with clean environment, no destruction of environment. So that's what we would want to see in our mining sector. With proper regulation, the ENR has to implement properly the environmental standards to ensure that as we open up the investors to mining, we do not destroy the environment.
Lastly on my part, sir. Pinagtibay ho ng Senado yung yung ILO para sa mga OFWs natin for the safer workspaces. Paano naman po on the part on economic side naman po, paano po nito makatutulong ho na sabi nga mapalakas pa yung ating mga OFWs abroad, given na meron na silang assurance for a safe workplaces po?
Our policy ngayon, and this has been stated by our president, that we need to create jobs here so that our workers will not have to be forced to migrate just to earn a living or protect or support their families. No, if they do, that's a choice that they will make, right? But it should not be a force. So our focus is getting getting the economy robust enough and strong enough to attract investors, so that the jobs, the quality jobs, are created here. And for those who are still prefer to go anyway, then of course we need to see that they are also well protected, no? And that's the job of our Department of Labor or Migrant Workers Office and the DFA, no? Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have other questions? Mikha?
Sir, this is more of an academic question rather than a policy question because I was wondering if there are economies or countries that we can look at as cautionary tales in terms of a demographic dividend going wrong because we have a young economy, median age around 24, 25. But the problem is we have a high rate of stunting, which could affect the quality of the future labor market. And also the learning losses that you mentioned, which would also impact on the skill sets that our labor force would have going forward. So may mga ganong economies ba that were similarly situated like us na hindi na maximize yung young median age in sustaining economic growth.
Well, I can cite our neighbors that have gone through the demographic transition and benefited substantially from that demographic dividend. No? The demographic dividend is happens when you find that the working age is growing faster than the dependency age, no? So that there are more people are now looking for work, and because there are now more people looking for work on finding work, and than people being dependent on those workers, then the savings in the of the economy grow, and that those savings are funneled to improving further the human capital, the infrastructure, and so on. Now, so going back to our neighbors, of course, Taiwan, South Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, now Vietnam, all went through this demographic transition, and that transition contributed substantially to the rapid growth that they experienced, no? And it could last for initially the first, what we call the first dividend, that the demographic transition that I mentioned can last for 2 to 3 decades. The other one is when you are already able to spend more for for the human capital of your existing and forthcoming labor, upcoming labor, then the productivity of those will be even higher than their parents. So that again become another source of growth, and it will be that kind of growth will last for many decades, no? Or that source of growth will last for many decades. Now, so the key there is for you to be able to benefit from a demographic transition like what we are seeing now, experiencing now. One, there are jobs, there are quality jobs, because if the number of workers rising as a proportion of the total population, but if they cannot find jobs, then they get those are waste human capital, no? So there are jobs, and that's why we are focusing on our efforts on an investment. A good deal about our effort is in enticing investors to invest in the Philippines, and precisely to take advantage of that workforce. Now, that second phase of that demographic dividend, that is when you are able to invest into the quality of your human capital, particularly the children. Now, then they will become more productive in the future when they join the labor market. That will contribute again another source of potential growth, no? That's why it is disturbing for us that we were hit hard by these learning losses associated with the COVID-19, no? And our response to the COVID-19. We have to recover quickly from that to minimize the the damage and the potential growth, no? Because the ano yung for us to hit or for us to sustain the 6.5 to 8% or 6.5 to 7.5%, say over a long time, you must be able to raise your potential growth. And one way of doing that is ensuring that your workforce, future workforce, will be very productive. Meaning you have to invest in their human capital while they were children. They were in school. And for those who are already outside school, you have to invest in upskilling, retraining, and so on. Yeah. So that's the challenge for us, is to ensure that for this demographic dividends to be a boon for for our long-term development. We need to invest in the human capital of the current generation and as well as the future generation.
Thank you. We have other questions. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, sir. Robina Cedar from Daily Manila Shimbun. Sir, based on our projection, what is the worst case scenario that we're looking at in terms of the impact of El Nino, especially in inflation next year? What month are we expecting to feel the effect of El Nino?
Dun sa data na pinalabas ng DOST kahapon, makikita natin doon na yung April, May, next year yun ang pinaka worst, no? Kasi by May, mga 65 provinces may be expected to suffer drought, while about another 6 may suffer dry spell, no? Projection pa lang naman, lang pa lang naman yun. Things can change, no? Kasi climate is sometimes unpredictable, you know? But that's what the data are telling us now. So, again, kaya ang sinabi ko kanina, if we learn from the lessons of El Nino, past episodes of El Nino, we must be able to intervene, get your programs early enough to ensure that the disruptions in the supply chain, particularly for food, of course, power also, because we have hydro is also dependent on water, no? And the diseases, as I mentioned earlier, are also associated with changes in temperature and so on. So yun, we must be able to deploy all our available tools so that we can prevent the expected impacts of this El Nino phenomenon. If we succeed in those, then we should be okay. So the worst scenario, we don't do anything, right? Which of course is do nothing. It's of course it's not an option at all. No, because again. The El Nino is not only an economic, doesn't only affect the economic output, but more importantly, the social and human impact, no, of the of this phenomenon, especially for the poor, because they usually the poor have less capacity, ability to um, uh, uh, to to cope with events like this. No, they have very little savings, so they cannot. Normally for the rich, 6 months of the income, you can go along with that. You have a lot of savings to tide you over, but that's not the case uh, for the poor. You know.
Sir, you mentioned earlier na yung agriculture will be highly affected by El Nino next year. So in previous months, yung inflation natin is also affected by the agriculture products. So since the agriculture will be highly affected by El Nino next year, can we expect na mas matataas pa yung inflation next year?
Not necessarily nga. That's why we're saying that kung halimbawa, alam natin na okay, nag-decrease ang production ng corn, ng rice, then anong option natin, di ba? So, option natin is nag-raise kanina, mag-preposition na tayo. We assist the private sector to preposition, import, and for us in government, for example, for the Department of Agriculture, it will make it sure that those who are prepositioning, storing now, so that there are goods that will be available a few months from now, will be able to do that by because they're not prevented from getting the necessary permits or mga ganon.
Thank you, Sec. Yes, Kai? Okay.
Following that explanation. Sir, regarding how confident are we that we will be able to source our raw materials that we will need next year to cushion the impact on commodity prices, yung kung ano man ang mangyayari with regard to the El Nino. Hindi po ba dumaan din sila ng similar na problem with El Nino, some of our trade partners?
Yeah, that's true. You would expect some commodities to see world prices, to see their prices in the global market rise. So again, if you don't want to import those high rise prices, I mean, the high prices, what do? You can di ba? One way is if you already have existing high tariffs for those commodities, ba't hindi mo bababaan temporarily para ma-reduce yung impact ng high global prices sa local market? Ganun lang,
So for all yung halimbawa, you're more open to expanding further the coverage of EO10?
That should depend on the situation. That's why the work of the ISC IMO is very critical, because we should know kung ano yung commodities that are badly affected. Kasi iba-ibang provinces could be affected differently, and commodities are not some are grown in the north, some are grown in Mindanao, but so depende kung saan yun. We have to study those well and then recommend if it's important that or necessary that we need to temporarily reduce those tariffs while global prices are high, then that should be an option. And any government actually does, sa Europe, I remember when I was still a graduate student sa agricultural economics. Ganon ang pinag-aaralan namin, how they stabilize local prices within the EU. is they get those tariffs variable. Kung mataas ang presyo sa world market, bababaan nila yung tariff. Kung mababa yung presyo sa world market, tataasan nila yung tariff. Ganon. And then, so the domestic prices nila are stable. Dapat ganun ang ginagawa natin.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Do you have other questions? So I guess that's our last question. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for being with us for covering NEDA this 2023. So hope to see you again next year. Let us know if this format works for you. And hopefully next year we'll hold it at the Mega Tower. So we have a new work office temporarily. So we are at the 32nd and 34th floor of the Mega Tower beside Mega Mall and in between Mega Mall and Shangri-La. So is lunch ready? So we have lunch. Feel free to stay until 3 p.m. Again, thank you very much and Merry Christmas po.